Hello and welcome to New Earth Podcast. We have with us today the wonderful Norie Huddle. And Norie's a bit of an interesting character because she retired age 25 in order to really explore all the kind of issues that need solving in our with humanity. So I'm going to let you introduce yourself, Norie, because I'm sure you've got a few stories to tell.
Well, yes. And actually, when I retired, it was an amazing experience to suddenly get that I was supposed to retire. And really, I wasn't thinking so much about all the issues of the world, even though I'd been definitely thinking about them. It was what I got was I was supposed to do only what made absolute sense to me for the rest of my life. And since I remember back to the day I was born and I knew I'd come here to do something, it was very clear to me that I was to find and fulfill my life's purpose. So that really has been the trajectory. That led to just an absolutely amazing life. Because when I retired, which was in 1970, at the age of 25, there was no one doing that, and I was a total anomaly. And it was within 2 years, I found myself, actually within a year and a half I found myself in Japan. And I had my cosmic assignment to write a book exposing the Japanese environmental crisis, how it had gotten so bad, using systems training I had gotten in the Peace Corps, and that I was well on the way. I wrote that book. It became a bestseller both in the US and in Japan, pre-internet, so this was kind of a big deal. And I also, by the time the book came out, I found that I had gotten incredibly famous. I was like a hula hoop in Japan because of my very simple lifestyle. So that was, I didn't do this to become famous, but I was speaking a message of simplicity and focusing on higher values and doing something that would be of service to society while living on $100 a year. And no one could believe that I really was doing that. But that whole story is very funny, how I became famous. But I mean, I was talking to 50, 60 million people on TV, radio, and in the print media. So that was kind of an amazing experience.
Wow.
To have that happen, And I left in the middle of my star rising, came back, organized a bicycle trip across the US to rediscover America after 4 years of being away. And that led to another book. That led to my getting hired to kick off the anti-nuclear movement nationwide in the US, which was an amazing experience. And by the end of the year that I was doing that, I realized if we were in the White House, we might not do any better because there was so much backbiting in the anti-nuclear movement among different factions. And I decided it couldn't be all them. I had to have some of it in me too. So I took all the energy I'd been putting out into the world and focused it on cleaning up the garbage in me. And toward the end of that year, which was 1978, I began thinking, gosh, there's something that I'm supposed to do, and I have no idea what it is. And so to find what that something was, I was offered a house to use for 10 days I did a 10-day juice fast. And the 9th day, I had the impression of a voice in my head saying, go out and interview people of all walks of life on how to make America and the world more secure. And I felt ecstatic. And I thought, well, that's a wonderful concept. But I'm going to do one more day just in case, we were just joking about that, what we really want to. So, but it held. And I ended up doing that, and that became a New York Times bestseller, which was an amazing experience also. And but I didn't feel and the New York Times bestseller actually was where I discovered the best game on earth. And that's the focus of today's conversation. Is how
I just want to sidetrack as well before we get on to the best game of work, because didn't you have a global meme in you're a TEDx speaker as well, aren't you? And didn't you have a global meme as well?
That came a little bit later, not much later, because by 1980 was the origins of what happened in 1980. I did a beautiful mind map. It's really quite lovely. I redid it afterwards to make it really pretty. And in it, one of the things I identified that was needed, and this was using my systems training that I had gotten in the Peace Corps, which I'm going to be teaching a course on that I want to put online. But in this, I noted that what we needed was a new story for humanity about how we can transform. And I think that planted the subconscious seed in my mind that led to my discovering, and I mean, I can tell that story a little later. The actual best game got created first, but then the butterfly story became the first special project of the best game on earth.
And this was the global meme, wasn't it? Your butterfly.
Yeah, exactly. And the global meme is of a caterpillar transforming into a butterfly, where what I saw happening in humanity was very parallel to what happens inside the chrysalis, where there start to appear new cells when the caterpillar goes into chrysalis and the caterpillar starts to break down. The caterpillar is like today's society that's breaking down.
Yeah.
And it goes into chrysalis. It starts to melt down into kind of a soup. And inside the caterpillar's dying body, there are cells that have never been there before. And those are actually called imaginal cells. And each cell, the early ones are killed off by the immune system of the caterpillar, which is still strong and working, attempting to keep the caterpillar alive, kind of a losing game because the caterpillar really has reached the end of its life cycle. But it does try to keep, fighting these imaginal cells that it thinks are foreign bodies that are enemies. And so like early imaginal cells would be like Jesus or Joan of Arc, I'd say Gandhi, Martin Luther King. These are all speaking to a new vision of society that is totally different and realizable, but by different means. And I've been very much focused on how to do this ever since I got the meme. And so these early imaginal cells are killed off, but more and more of them appear. And then they enter a new phase after a while where the little tiny lonely individual imaginal cells like you and me and people watching this show begin to clump together into friendly little groups, and they're all resonating at the same frequency inside these little clumps. They're inside the dying body of the caterpillar inside the chrysalis. And then after a while, these little clumps of imaginal cells begin to cluster together. And pretty soon you've got this long string of clumping and clustering imaginal cells, all resonating at the same frequency, all passing information from one to the other as we are doing now. And at some point, it all hooks up and there's this moment of epiphany. And I think we're very, very close to that now, and where all of a sudden, all these imaginal cells go, wait a minute, we're something new, we're something different, we're something wonderful.
I love it.
Yeah, and in that realization is a shout of birth of this new butterfly that's forming. It still doesn't look like a butterfly. It's just a long string of clumping and clustering imaginal cells, but now there's a vision of there's something new, something wonderful that we are to create together. And that's the process of how to bring out all the different imaginal cells so that we can nurture and support each other while we build this new civilization. That really was part of the focus of my TEDx talk that you mentioned.
Yes.
And you can find have that talk right now. I just checked this morning and I've contacted my webmaster, but the site is down. But if you put bestgame.org, hopefully in the next few days, the site will be up and working
by
again.
the time it will be by the time we air this, and I'll put the link underneath as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, just going back to the butterfly, I mean, it does feel like we are going through this same transformation as a collective at the moment. We're finding our wings, as it were.
Well,
because we've kind of been stuck in that conditioning of who we, you know, of and we're breaking free, you know, we're reimagining all those things.
What happens with in the case of the caterpillar butterfly is the moment after in my book, it says each cell begins to do just that very thing it's most drawn to do. And every other cell supports it in doing just that. A great way to organize a butterfly. Yeah. And at this point, you have the individualization of function. So you do what you love to do, I do what I love to do, and Joe, Mary, everyone else does what they love to do. And in that new energy of loving what you're doing, we are creating a new civilization. And in my TEDx talk, I talked about 5 different areas where we're creating how the past revolutions of history were carried off, and the 5 things they all had in common. And one of the ones I've been working on most recently is the new money, because the new money, I think, is like the lifeblood flowing into the new butterfly to enable it to fly. And I'm going to be doing more speaking on the new money systems, because there are many new money systems that have evolved. The current money system, which is debt-based, has serious problems with it because more and more money is concentrating into a smaller number of hands. And when the civilization goes down, because every civilization in the past, according to Will and Ariel Durant, failed, you know, when money concentrated too much into a small number of hands, and then either there was a bloody revolution or a benign redistribution. So I say, you know, wouldn't it be more fun to bring in the billionaire class and have them supporting all the wonderful good things, and seeing that, hey, even though we don't have $1 billion or multi-billions of dollars, we have some pretty interesting ideas and some pretty smart people, and we are a lot of fun to play with. So that's where the game comes in, that if we can look at this transformation that we're going through as a kind of a game. I started designing that game when I had the aha in 1980. And the aha came out of an interaction I had with a Soviet diplomat. This was I was about to start at what ended up being, I guess, about a 2 or 3 month trip around the 2-month trip, I guess it was 3 months around the United States. And friends organized a party for me up in New York, in New York City, in Brooklyn. And one of the people who came to the party was a Soviet diplomat I had met earlier in the spring, who had, when we were talking, he said, you know, Nori, you believe in your way more than I believe in my way. It makes me a little bit afraid of you. And I said, no, don't be afraid of me. I'm your sister. I told you, you're my brother. We've got to work together if we're going to make this whole change, transformation work. He said, you are right. You are right. We must talk. We must talk. So now roll the tape forward. That was in April, I believe. And now it's October, and I'm going to this party my friends are hosting for me for this big trip I'm about to take across the US. Yuri comes to the party, and he has a bottle of vodka, you know, and his arms are like this, and he has a big scowl on his face. And I said, what's wrong? You know, did you have a bad day at the office? I mean, that was what occurred to me to say. And he goes, the problem is nobody is real. Everybody is a phony. Everybody is wearing a mask, covering up who they really are. And I burst into tears. And I said, it's not true. I'm real, and you're real when you're not saying dumb things like this. And one of my friends there jerked his thumb at me and said to Yuri, she's real, all right. Oh. And he goes, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to hurt your feelings. You have to understand how difficult it is to be a Soviet citizen living in your country. Everybody hates me just because I'm a Soviet. And I said, no, that's not true. Nobody here hates you. I told you, you're our brother. We're your brothers and sisters. We all need to talk. We need to work together to find a new way. And and besides, we came here to boogie, not to talk politics. He said, boogie, I do not know this word. Well, come on in, we'll show you. So then we have this great party. And toward the end of the evening, Yuri had just told this joke about a Chinese computer. I won't go into the joke, but it was really funny. And all of a sudden, he's sitting across from me on the couch across from me. And I can even see him now in my mind's eye. He started laughing and laughing so hard, he couldn't catch his breath. And I'm looking at it going, I think what he's doing is he's seeing himself sitting with the enemy, having this amazingly good time. And it's funny to him. That was kind of my thought of what was going on. And I said in Russian, because I had majored in Russian in college because I was so concerned about the arms race with the Soviet Union. I wanted to be a helpful force in stopping this. I said, Davai, brat, что ты смешно? What is so funny, brother? And when he got his breath, he said, Nori, it would be such a pity if we destroyed each other. We are so nice. Isn't that beautiful? And for me, it was like, oh, that's the key. That's it. That's what I've been looking for. He's right. We are nice. And when we're not nice, it's because the patterns of civilization that have evolved over millennia have suppressed our wholeness and our aliveness. Mm-hmm. And when our wholeness and aliveness is suppressed, that creates the dark side in each one of us. Mm-hmm. And it is that collective dark side that's creating things like the nuclear and thermonuclear weapons. It's creating, all these things that we consider so evil in the world, but it's that collective part of each one of us where the wholeness and aliveness has been suppressed. And I said, oh my God, we need to create a new life game that releases and opens out this wholeness and aliveness, removes those blockages to our wholeness and aliveness, and enables us to come forth fully as alive, wonderful human beings that we really are in our nature, because we are created by the infinite eternal one, and we are of that. And that's perfect. It's love, it's truth, it's beauty, it's joy. So we can be all those things. We need to find a way to create this new game. And I named the best game on earth.
And it's happening, isn't it? More and more people. This is New Earth podcast, and I interview people like yourself who are stepping into this new way.
Yeah,
and really encouraging other people to do the same. And I love what you said earlier about this piece about finding what you love.
Yes.
Because the finding what you love, helping humanity, because if each of us steps into that joy, into that love, into that game of playing, I'm doing what I love, then isn't that amazing? That's a shift rather than working for money. That's a whole shift, isn't it?
Exactly. And then to redesign the money system so it supports us doing that.
Fabulous. Let's dive into it. Let's dive into how your game works, Nori.
Okay, well, first off, when I started thinking about the game, and I knew that truth and love were absolutely critical pieces of this, because truth is like the rock that we're standing on. Remember, Jesus said, build your house on a rock. Truth and love are that rock. Okay, so the first rule, it took me 10 years to write the rules of the game, because I was kind of slow. No one handed me tablets, and I wanted to test every rule, really kick the tires and make sure that every rule was really, really good. And I wanted them all phrased in the positive, because I'm trained in psychology, and when you use negatives like thou shalt not kill, the subconscious mind does not hear the not.
Right.
And so we have been, when you hear the phrase "thou shalt not kill," what you are seeing is someone being killed, and thou shalt not do that. But the image is killing. And thou shalt not bear false witness. It goes on and on. Many of the 10 commandments are negatively phrased, and I would submit that maybe that should be looked at,
Right.
And even in the back of my book, Butterfly, I use the quote from the book of Proverbs, "Where there is no vision, the people perish," which is an amazing quote. Well, I've actually flipped that now to where there, and this, I call it the Huddle corollary, where there is an inspiring vision, the people prosper.
Yes.
So that's what we're
Totally.
doing now, is we're building this
Absolutely.
inspiring vision of who we are as a human species, what the earth and who we human beings can become, which is absolutely an amazing new earth, as you call it.
So do you feel the first piece is the inner work of that, really nutting out what our soul purpose is at this time, and really finding, what it is we need to play? Do you think that's the first step?
Well, I would say I would like to kind of run through the rules of the game, or guidelines for playing the game, and I would say absolutely as they say, as above, so below. Well, as within, so without. As we become more and more a clear source of energy and focus and activity, then more and more we're led to participate in powerful ways, ever more powerful ways, to bring those changes into society. So the first rule is speak the truth. And the second rule is acknowledge the truth when others speak it. And the third rule is come from love, respect, and gratitude. And that's just, if you speak the truth and come from love, respect, and gratitude, then you're already, well on the path of playing the game. The next rule was my father's motto, which is leave the trail better than you found it. And that's a very interesting rule, because it's not only, say, picking up trash but it's, if you come across someone who's in an unhappy mood or a bad mood, see if you can help lift them up a bit. And then the fifth rule is expect miracles. And if you do the first four, speak the truth, acknowledge the truth when others speak it, come from love, respect, and gratitude, and leave the trail better than you found it, you will get miracles.
Yes.
So then the next rule is,
and I think another thing is to believe in miracles. If you believe in miracles, you'll see miracles.
Well, exactly. I think it was it Henry Ford who said that if you believe you can, and if you believe you can't, you're right, you can't.
Yeah, both are
So,
right.
the next rule is do what gives you joy and create joy in what you do. So yeah, maybe you don't love sweeping the house, but if you can bring joy into that activity and consider it a kind of meditation and do it well, then you can create joy in an activity and I mean, I say that as someone, my mother used to make me vacuum the house and clean and stuff, and I hated doing it. But then when I had a big flip in realizing I could treat this like a meditation and enjoy the process. And that was a big change for me, to transformation for me, to realize I could do things that I didn't really initially enjoy doing because of my bad programming, but I could turn them into things that actually were very positive. The next rule is be generous with who you are and what you have. And then be a good friend and teammate, clean up your messes, learn the lessons, and move on. So that's an interesting one, because yeah, you want to clean up your messes, your mistakes, and you want to learn the lessons, but don't dwell on it. Don't beat yourself up, and don't, harp on it. Move on, having learned the lessons. Okay. Yeah. And the final rule creates what's called a cybernetic feedback loop, where the game can constantly improve, which is if you have an idea for how to improve the game, share it.
Fabulous.
Yeah. So these are simple, very, very simple rules. And if you play it, live your life by them and play what I call the game, it'll make an incredible, dramatic difference in your life very, very quickly.
That's amazing. I'm interested in the first one, actually, truth, because truth is an interesting one, isn't it? Because there's kind of like divine truth that, you know, that but then let's, you know, within that we all have our own truths, and that, so it's that acknowledging somebody else's truth, which might not be our truth. Is that how you see it? Because
so it's more that I think we're all seeking to find what really works, what is the truth of a situation. And there are now competing narratives out there, as we've seen. And, you know, without going into those, the way currently so often is to squash the narrative that doesn't jive with what, say, the authorities or the moneyed interests want, which is sort of silly, because, you know, you can hold it down, hold it back. It's kind of like Galileo, when he said the earth revolves around the sun and not the reverse, with the sun and all the stars revolving around the earth. You know, the church made him recant and take it back or we'll kill you. And so he recanted, but because he to live, but he said it still moves around, the earth still moves around the sun. And it took a couple hundred years before that truth was, you know, acknowledged and brought into the mainstream narrative and way of thinking. So I think that we're going to find several narratives of that sort that,
yes,
you know, have been suppressed. But, you know, let's those of us who see a different truth and live by this, if our lives are working, it just may be that by gently asking, I find asking questions is a wonderful way to get people to open up more. I remember one friend, this is a funny story, a friend, a very good friend, was always thought he was right, okay? And so one day I asked him, have you ever had an experience where you were absolutely convinced you were right, and then you discovered you were not? And he thought for a moment and he started laughing and he said, oh yeah, I remember when my boss said XYZ and I thought ABC, and then he turned out to be right. From that time on, he stopped being so dogmatic about his being right.
Yes.
It just reminded him that, well, gosh, on that one occasion, at least, I was wrong. And I have found that just by asking very simple questions without being confrontational, that's an amazing way to open people up and help them see that maybe, just maybe, there's another way of looking at this that's valid.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, because I went through a period of really speaking out and, you know, speaking truth, and it just seemed to cause a lot of polarity. Yeah. So now I'm just sitting with, you know, it's like sitting with the fact that, you know, that's somebody else's truth, you know, that at the moment for them, that's what they're seeing, and just trying to be compassionate about that, because it's a tricky one, isn't it?
It's a tricky one, but by asking questions, I mean, oh my God, I could tell you an amazing story about that. But I think just by asking really what Bronowski, the philosopher Bronowski, called impertinent questions, we can basically help people open up if it's done. I found that, for example, when I was doing my interviews for my book, Surviving the Best Game on Earth, which was basically a redefining national security, what I found was that by creating a really safe, loving space for the interviewee, and that this person was feeling gratitude because this person was giving me the gift of his or her time and knowledge and insights, that by asking then when they would tell me their truth, say, and I would have a very different truth that I was seeing, from my experience and from all the interviewing I've been done. I would say something like, "Oh, that's really interesting." Some people I've interviewed would say or have said, blah, 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 which would be the counterposition. Okay. And I wonder how you might respond to them. And then they would tell me, and then I would say, okay. And then another question would pop into my mind, because all I was doing was staying connected with the infinite eternal one, feeling love and gratitude, and making this a safe space. And the questions would come to me, and what happened was we were going deeper and deeper into the underlying assumptions the person was making to hold that position of this is the truth. And literally, I saw people flip doing this in matter of minutes.
That makes a lot of sense. This gently approach and asking questions rather than telling, because ultimately, by presenting a different truth, as it were, it is challenging someone's belief systems. It's challenging perhaps the aspects of themselves that they haven't looked at, that's just conditioning, that's they perhaps believe they've held all their whole life without even questioning.
Exactly.
So that if we approach it too hard, we're just going to get defenses.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I love this kind of questioning in a very, very gentle way. And
one of the things that I have found over time, and this is, I got trained in I'm an advanced practitioner of something called the voice dialogue process, which, when people, we all have that sort of committee of voices in us that can argue at times. And sometimes they come to alignment and sometimes they don't, and those are these sub-personalities or voices within us that all formed from the time we were born, maybe even in utero, formed to protect the vulnerable child within each one of us, because every one of us is very vulnerable. We could be hit by a car as we cross the corner in 10 minutes from now, or we could have a meteorite land on us, whatever, that's sort of a not a terribly common occurrence, but it does happen. Or a lightning bolt strike us. I have one friend who was hit 2 or 3 times by lightning bolts, so these things do happen. And what we're very vulnerable in our core essence, because in this physical body, in this lifetime here on earth. And so the way that we find security and a sense of real security is by our connectedness with the infinite eternal one.
Yes.
And when we are disconnected from that, there's this existential anxiety. And to my mind, that is one of the things that's driving the greed in society, is people wanting more and more material stuff because they've lost that connectedness with the infinite eternal one. They've forgotten we're here forever. We really want to get it right so that we can live in joy and peace and harmony and really generosity as well, because as you give, you receive. So I think that we're in a place now where we can see this. And as we see this, we can be very generous with our compassion, our listening, so that others have a chance to share their truth and explore the underlying assumptions and come out to a place that's more empowering. And I do find that so many of the attitudes that are driving sort of strongly held truths come out of traumatic experiences.
I think so, and I feel that that's why it's very important. I've certainly shifted my perspective in the last few years on how to approach this, of just holding a compassionate space, because I don't think we can wake people up, really. I think it's a journey, it's an inner process that that we can plant seeds, but not actually, it has to come from within.
It's an inside job. It's an inner switch. Exactly. And
Yes.
I do think, though, that we can become better and better as catalysts that give people the sense of security and connectedness with the infinite one, so they can flip that switch.
Yeah, I mean, that's very much what I do with my work and with the groups that I do, holding a compassionate space around some of these things like ancestral healing. So healing all the layers of trauma. Creating new earth is another one, looking at all the layers of conditioning, you know, so that we can actually start to connect on a much deeper level with that oneness, that divine spark within us, and that connects to all that is. So yeah, it's an incredible journey, and that's that's what I feel my life purpose is helping people connect on a deeper level, firstly with their own authenticity, but then how that manifests in the world as their life purpose and connection.
That's beautiful. Maybe I could interview you for your program sometime.
Yay, that would be fabulous, because you're a great interviewer, I can tell.
I would love to do that. I would love to do that. Yeah.
I'm exploring these kind of, because this whole idea of, actually I did one recently where that was much more of a three-way conversation. Because it's nice to, you know, it's the conversation, isn't it? And it's allowing that ebb and flow as well. And that's a lot of the work that I do as well, is exploring these power imbalances, you know, trying to become so that we all have a voice, you know, we all believe that we have something important to say. So
well, I think this is my idea of the term the second coming and the corporate body of Christ. Well, what if it's all of us coming to our wholeness, our aliveness, finding our joy, what gives us joy, fulfilling what we came here to do, that everyone has a life purpose that is going to contribute to an amazing new earth, as you call it, a transformation of the world that will create a global society that is as different from today's society as a beautiful butterfly is from an earthbound caterpillar that's eating up everything it comes to, you know, to
that's
gobbling,
phenomenal.
You know, and we are turning the earth back into a garden of paradise, which is
absolutely bringing heaven on earth through that inner transformation. I really feel that. I'd love to talk with you about the pieces, you know, because you've already mentioned the new money system. Are there any aspects of this idea of playing the new game and what we can recreate, you know, systems that are failing that we can kind of re-envision, redream, as it were? Are there any particular systems you'd like to talk about?
Well, for sure there, I mean, as I mentioned, I'm trained in a methodology that when I was a Peace Corps volunteer from 1966 to 1968 in Colombia. And I was trained by a group of applied anthropologists. They only trained 2 programs, one in 1965, Peace Corps volunteers going to Chile, and one in 1966, my group, to go to Colombia. And the training that we received was basically a training they had developed from spending 3 years in Vietnam from 1957 to 1960, before the U.S. got involved directly and openly in the Vietnam War. And their assignment was to develop a methodology that can be used anywhere in the world in a community of any size, from a small indigenous village to a corporation to a religious organization to a nation state to a planet, and understand how things work and how to make effective interventions. Well, this, for a group of applied anthropologists, this was like an absolute dream assignment. And it took them 3 years to do it. And then they came back and started teaching it as a master's program in applied anthropology at Michigan State. It was a year-long program. And as I say, I was one of the beneficiaries of learning this methodology. Toward the end of that year of teaching it at Michigan State, there started coming out in the US media and in the global media the fact that the CIA was the group that had sponsored them to do this methodology, to create this methodology. But they came out in the media about a year after they had finished developing the methodology that the CIA was running a covert operation called the Phoenix Project, or the Phoenix Program, where they were systematically assassinating key people in Vietnam and in Southeast Asia. And our guys looked at Michigan State, these applied anthropologists looked at who was being killed, and they went, oh my God, that's how they're using our methodology.
Oh no.
Yeah, and they were so angry, they organized the first sit-in against the Vietnam War in the United States. And I had the incredible privilege of learning the methodology, okay, and applying it for good for the last over 50 years that I've been, trained in this. I've taught it all over the world. And it's absolutely life-changing when you learn how things work and then how to make effective interventions. And I combined this with the voice dialogue work, because the voice dialogue work is that internal map of how the voices interact within one and interact with other people. And it's an amazing map also. And those two things, I think, have made me a pretty powerful organizer. And and so if I were to, I would say that systems of society we need to look at changing and transforming. I could talk for half an hour about that, but let me just do real quickly just a few to give
We've
you.
only got a few more minutes, so before we close
I'll
up,
just,
so just
I'll just give you a few. I'll just give you a few. One is, of course, a money system. We currently have a debt-based money system that is creating scarcity and is ever more going into a small number of hands. And we are heading for a major societal breakdown if we fail to transform that in time. Two, another one is in the family system. We are bringing babies into this world in a very traumatic way. And that absolutely is every generation now is coming in traumatized. As I say, I remember back to the day I was born, and I remember that early trauma. Okay, I have very, very clear memory of that. I'm working on my memoirs right now, so I'm going to be sharing a whole lot of this in my personal journey, through my personal story. Another one is the education system. The education system was developed in the industrial age to teach people how to read and write in at least a way that they could read the instructions on the new machinery that was coming in the 1840s and follow instructions, show up on time, and follow the instructions. And so today we're in a whole different era. We're in an information age, moving, I hope, into a spiritual age where we are all remembering we're one with this infinite, eternal one that's infinitely, eternally creating, that we are co-creators with this infinite, eternal oneness, and that we can create something new, something different, something wonderful that is, filled with joy and love and harmony, truth, abundance, prosperity for all. Good. And then there's we need I'd say the religious systems have become more about join my religious game and you'll go to heaven, and any other game you'll go to hell. That's not the way it works, and so we need a religion. The word actually means connecting back or binding back to the cosmos, to this infinite, eternal one. And so if we live a true religious life, we are moment by moment doing our utmost to be connected and remember that we are one with this infinite, eternal one, and receiving that inner guidance. And that is that inner guidance, which I have practiced since I was a baby, has saved me on more than one occasion from being raped. It saved my life. I swear it works, and that's really when people say, Nori, what kind of work do you do? I don't get it. You're in all these different things. And I say, I only have one job in life, and that's to stay connected.
Yeah. Love it.
So it really gets very simple in the beginning, in the end. where there is no beginning and end. We are one with all that is, and we're here to do our parts and to live a life that's going to contribute to others to find and fulfill their parts as well. And as we all do this together, oh boy.
Oh, that's incredible. Thank you so much. It's been amazing chatting with you. Is there any last thing that you'd like to share before we finish up today? I put the links of how to contact you underneath this video in the description.
Thank you so much, Sarah. And I would say thank you so much for doing what you're doing, because you are clearly fulfilling your part doing these interviews, and you said you have some groups, and I really mean it. I would love to interview you for your podcast sometime. That would be
I'll have
really,
to take you up on that. That's beautiful. Thank you. And I really love, it's very guided, and I really love talking to all these incredible people like yourself. It's very inspirational. So
well, you do a wonderful job, because your listening brings out, what we have to say. So congratulations and thank you again. And I'm so glad that you connected.
Well,
Bless
thank
you.
you so much. It's amazing journey. We could have actually spoken for hours, I think. I feel like we just touched on it with you.
And maybe we can co-create something. We have this amazing place in Ecuador. It's 350 acres, a healing and retreat center. Maybe we can co-create an event here for
that sounds amazing. Let's do some brainstorming. So
all right.
do hit subscribe if you've enjoyed this podcast. Thanks everybody for listening, and bye for now.